Hey, college football fans. So if you saw the first video, or even if you didn't see the first video, I recently put out my first two conference previews of our 2022 preview. Now, I am going to be releasing previews for all 10 conferences in FBS plus the independents, so 11 if you want to get technical. Actually, technical would be that there's only 10 conferences because the independents aren't technically a conference. But anyway, I digress. So how do you find that? Well, you can go to the top here under our 2002 preview. It's also linked in the middle of our homepage here, but I think the best way to go would be going to our 2022 preview. So the first one that was released was our SEC preview. So I'm going to show you how you can access that and some of the features in that. So right at the top, a link here will take you to the Google Sheets page where you can see a lot of information. So I'll take you there right now. And, a lot of stuff that mirrors the preseason magazines, whether it's Phil Steele, Athlon, Lindy's, Pick Six previews. There's a lot of data, and it's not as visually and aesthetically pleasing as some of the magazines due to various factors. But I know a lot of you who are following on Twitter, you want the data, you want the information, especially as it might pertain towards projections, win totals, whether you're going to go over or under, and also, how talented is a team. So I give you kind of some of the numerics and the analytics that go into ranking the teams from a power ranking standpoint, from 1 all the way down to 14 here in the SEC. The PreSpring power rankings, so looking at the teams prior to kickoff of the 2022 season. So after the bowl season was done and after some movement was done, so right around spring games and maybe a little bit after some of these spring practices had concluded, these are the talent rankings based on the roster, based on who they had prior to their new class coming in. And then pretty much everything else is projecting what I see for 2022. So you've got unit rankings for 3 spots on offense, 3 on defense, and then 3 in the special teams area, a first, second, and third team. So if you're wondering, okay, well, why do you have Auburn ranked as the number 4 team in the SEC? And then you can look and see, okay, well, they've got the 3rd best backfield. They've got the 2nd best offensive line. So those are 2 pretty good measures right there. They've got the top D line. They've got the 2nd best kicking unit in terms of kicker and punter in the SEC. So that just gives some credence to it. My actual predictions for records, both overall and in the SEC. And then over here on the right side, scroll over a little bit more, are the over-under numbers from DraftKings. So shout out to DraftKings. But this is the number that they've established for these programs, at least at the time that this preview was released. And I give you my pick. So if it's in lowercase, it's basically saying that's where I'm leaning. And if it's in all caps and it's got the word lock next to it, that's one that I feel highly confident in either being over, like Texas A&M being over 8.5, or Florida being over 7. And, in an instance where it might be a push. So like, for instance, DraftKings calls for South Carolina to win 6 games. I call the same thing. So I'm going to call that a push. But if I'm going to lean one way or the other, I would be more likely and I would be more expectant to see South Carolina hit over 6 than the under. Some of my superlatives. So, my prediction for the championship, Alabama facing off against Georgia and beating the Bulldogs in the SEC championship this year. My most intriguing team and reasons why, the team that's most likely to exceed, or in other words, go above what many of the preseason prognosticators are suggesting, and then also most likely to mislead. So you could look at the exceed team as maybe underrated and the mislead as the overrated. Call it whatever you will. These are the terms and the terminology that we use here on cfpcollegefootball.com. Other tabs below, the players, so the preseason honor roll, first, second, and third team, and maybe even a few honorable mentions. And the honorable mentions are in there because maybe you're saying, well, where's KJ Jefferson on this list? And while I don't put him first, second, or third team because I see better statistical outputs from these 3 players, Jefferson is certainly somebody who needs to be mentioned, and that's why he's in that honorable mention. Whereas within the running back room, there's really nobody that stood out to me at the time of press to where I said, okay, they need to be thrown in here with these other 6 backs. Color coding here, red means that it's a transfer. So you see quite a bit of transfers into the SEC. Blue means that they are a true freshman. So someone like Luther Burden, I put as our 3rd team wide receiver, and he's blue, meaning this is going to be his first year. He's a true freshman. So he's not a red shirt. He's not a JUCO product. This is his first year in any sort of collegiate program, and he's going to be that good to make that 3rd team. And I do that for defense and special teams. And you'll note that there are 12 positions on, actually there's 13 on offense. So I have 2 running backs, I have 3 wide receivers and a tight end, and then an all-purpose player, somebody who can kind of do it all. They're good at running the rock. They're also good at catching it, whether it's out of the backfield or whether they're a true wide receiver. And maybe they're also good on jet sweeps, fly sweeps, things like that. Defense, 4 down linemen, 4 linebackers, 4 defensive backs. So 12 spots there. And again, because you have a mix, you've got a team like Georgia that runs a 3-4. You've got teams that run a 4-2-5. You've got teams that run a 3-3-5. So kind of putting a conglomeration of all that in. And then special teams, I think that there's credence to having a kickoff artist because that helps with field position, as well as a place kicker, a punter, a kick returner, and a punt returner. And I'm giving love to those kickoff specialists because oftentimes the magazines will look at a place kicker and they're pretty good, but what about somebody who can also get a 75% touchback rate, or they don't give opposing teams a chance to return kickoffs, or they do a good job at pinning them deep. So I like to throw that out there as well. And then some other superlatives. So the best head coach overall, who would I take? The best new coach under 3 years. And I put that in there because sometimes a conference might not have any new coaches, or they might have 1 new coach who's in their first year. So going with 3 years and under, somebody who has done a really good job, or somebody who I think will do a really good job, and they are in their first, second, or third year with the program that they're currently assigned with. Then the list of transfers, and this is not all of them, but it's kind of guys who will make a splash with their new team. And I put them in order of importance. So Jermaine Burton, I think, is one of the top transfer guys, not including our top one here, Jahmyr Gibbs. So you might say, well, why is Jahmyr Gibbs not in the list of transfers for offense? It's because he's the top one, right? But then you could look at Burton as being the number 2 offensive transfer, Jackson Dart being the number 3, and so forth. Same thing with defense and special teams. And you might notice a guy here on offense and on special teams if they're a return specialist. And then the biggest impact freshmen, and in this I include true freshmen who are in their first year on campus, as well as redshirt freshmen. So somebody who maybe did not play more than 4 games last year, and this is their, considered to be the redshirt freshman year, but still somebody who can play a significant role, whether it's as a starter or whether it's as a quality backup, somebody who's going to get a lot of snaps and not somebody who's just going to get in the last 4 minutes of a game when their team is up 21. I don't want to call it garbage time because there's nothing about college football that's garbage time. Some strength of schedule and coaching production. So I show you how many years of experience the head coach has, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator. And then what I did is I took the wins that the head coach has here at this program, the winning percentage they have, multiply that by how many total wins they have. And that's where I come up with this number to give us a ranking for, or a somewhat subjective and objective ranking of the coaching. And this is kind of what their coaching production is. It's a conglomeration of years of experience, but also their winning percentage. So that way, if a coach has been there for 10 years, but maybe their win percentage is just around 500, they may not rank as high as somebody else who has been there 6 years, but their win percentage is at 700, and they've done more, even though it's in a smaller span of time. And then other things, miscellaneous stats, things that I'm kind of going off the Phil Steele metrics here with close losses, offensive yards per point, turnover margin, stock market indicator. And if you're a Phil Steele subscriber, what that is essentially taking the average of the last 3 years and comparing to how they did last year. Because sometimes if a team has won 10 games, and then last year things happen that maybe were out of their control and they dip down to about 5 games, you can still kind of compare and say, all right, well, this was an off year for LSU last year because prior to 2021, they had done pretty well. So they're in the green, which means that they're probably going to get back up to their winning ways this year. Last year was a year of turmoil in some regards. So, and then of course we've got the championships down at the bottom as well. So you can kind of see who's played in the championship in those years. So that's really the preview in a nutshell. Going back to the preview page, there's a conference schedule here. So it's a nice graphic where you can see each team, the week that they play, who they're playing, the bye weeks or the open weeks. And then what I'm going to get to in our next video, the links to all of these individual team pages. So you click on any one of these team links here, and it's going to take you to that team's 2022 page. And I'll talk more about that in our next video. But down at the bottom, you'll know who the commissioner of that conference is, some of the stats for that conference, the last year's season. So it's really just a Wikipedia page, but it does a nice job of giving a rundown of the preseason media picks, the preseason all-conference picks, week by week, players of the week honors, the all-conference players at the end of the season for the coaches and the media, things like that. And then also, of course, we're going to brandish CFP. This is our SEC honors from last year. So how we power rank the teams at the end of the season, the unit rankings at that we came up with. And then also we remind you, this is what we picked and this was how they actually finished. So, last year we picked Alabama to finish top in the West, as most people did. So we were spot on with that. We picked LSU to finish second and go 11-1. We were way off. That was 5 spots away from where they actually did finish, but we got it with Texas A&M and Mississippi State. We missed the boat a little bit with Auburn, Ole Miss, and Arkansas as well. And then you can kind of go back and see, where we landed on most intriguing team, most likely to exceed, and so forth. On the players here, you can see the honors that we gave after the season was done. So this was our postseason All-SEC honor roll. And if you compare it to the preseason honor roll, you'll notice that some players are different. Some players weren't even on there, and some players we were right on the money with, as well as crowning our offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, coach of the year, the coach on the rise that based on after their performance in 2021, this coach is working their way up. So we gave that to Lane Kiffin last year. Our conference newcomer of the year, which was awarded to Chance Campbell from Ole Miss, and then our See Me player of the year. So we have what we call our Watch Me player in the preseason, who is somebody that we think that you should watch out for, and they're gonna perform better than most people thought they would in the preseason. And so postseason, we call it our See Me player. So go back, see me, see what I can do. Go back and watch the film. Look at what I just did in this previous season, and you'll know that I stand out, and I should be getting some love either in this upcoming NFL draft or in the next college football season, whether I stay here or whether I go to another school. So again, thanks for watching. This is our preview edition. I'm Chappie, and this is what I know.